Hello, today we're going to be looking at Europe from the 1815 to about 1850. And this is the period of time after the French Revolution as well as Napoleon. So to set some background of the period before we move on to what's actually going on in this period, as I mentioned, this is after the French Revolution. Much of the bloodshed as well as the ideas that have passed through the French Revolution were taken by Napoleon, and he tried to expand upon that and also put it forth into all the regions he conquered. So, for example, Spain, he did try to get into Portugal as well, but failed. Certainly France, as well as going further east, for example, to Russia. So, what finally ended up defeating Napoleon was the major powers in Europe uniting together into an alliance to take him out. So you have Russia, for example, the Prussians, the British, all coming together, as well as the Netherlands coming together to defeat him militarily as well as economically. Finally, by 1815, he had been defeated several times, and now these powers had to figure out what to do with it. So this starts one of the very integral parts in European history where diplomacy actually wins out. Basically, you have Prince Clemens von Metternich, who is going to take it upon himself to try organize a peace in Europe. He sees that the balance of power is what needs to be maintained. Now, this balance of power was established a little bit during the years of Napoleon because all these powers rose up united to take down a bigger power that was dominating all of Europe. It was determined not only by Metternich but also many other individuals that there need to be balance in Europe. You couldn't have one individual having complete power and control in Europe. So this was agreed upon by many European powers, and this is still put into place even today, and certainly in past history. For example, when Adolf Hitler rose to power, many European powers united together to restrict his power. Eventually, that was going to take place several years later, but regardless, this is an idea and a policy that many countries throughout the world are going to use in Europe, but also around the world. So, this balance of power is going to be attempted to be maintained. Basically, the idea of the European Confederation at this time is that all the kings are going to get their power back. So they are going to return the kings of France back. So you're going to have Charles coming back to power, and also France returning to a monarchy. You're also going to see kings being put into place in Spain and Italy and many other areas. Now, in some areas, like the ones I just mentioned, it makes sense. In other ways, they picked and chose which way they wanted to go. Sometimes it was practical, sometimes it wasn't. But the general idea of this entire alliance system was to maintain peace. And this is going to be very successful all the way up throughout basically the 19th century, so the 1800s. It's going to fall to pieces, of course, in the next century with the 1900s, with World War I, World War II, and many other conflicts around the world. But regardless, this is going to be fairly successful, and this is brought on by the changes that were brought upon by the French Revolution, as well as Napoleon's part in taking over much of Europe at this time. So there is some good that comes out of this. Now, this agreement is going to be put into place in 1815 at the Congress of Vienna. With this system in place, as far as politics are concerned, it's going to be relatively peaceful. We'll get into the changes and some of the actions of these political figures later on, But first I want to just lay the background. What we'll be looking into next, although, is the rise of some of the ideologies that many of you are probably very familiar with. Some of these ideologies have very similar names, like, for example, conservatism, liberalism, nationalism. These are all phrases many of you have probably heard sometime in the last few years, certainly with some of the political campaigns going on. We'll explain how that occurs a little bit later. But how these ideas come to rise is certainly the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and certainly what Napoleon did is putting these ideas of social contracts, separation of church and state, balance of power within the government, the role of government for the people of the state, and certainly how people view the role of the people and the government. And so you start to see a shift brought upon by all these different scenarios to where the people believe that the government needs to follow through with certain ideas, protect the public, maintain order, such like that. How this happened, of course, was the writings under the Age of Enlightenment, and then those ideas were passed on through literature. You also have the Scientific Revolution, where basically that is going to become the rule of the day, where scientific knowledge or empirical data, basically data that can be tested and can be proven, is going to be the basically the rule of the day. So the church is going to reduce its power even further, because at this point of the 1800s, more people are seeing that hard data is more useful or more believable than what the church has been saying. And the church has had a bumpy ride for the past several centuries that didn't help. So with this sort of data, they're going to require the scientific knowledge to also be applied, and this data to also be applied into the social and political realms. And so people want the government to have actual data on what they're going to do, and actual written down laws, legislation, reasons, and progress of all of these policies. This is also going to bring about other social changes. For example, prison and punishment is also going to shift a little bit there as well. And there's many other different notations we can talk about with this process. But with the Scientific Revolution, the Age of Enlightenment, all these ideas, the shift from using actual hard data, that's going to forward the ideas of the conservative, the liberal movements, nationalism, and also the shifts in policy for a lot of these governments. So we'll move into that in the next video.